Do you guys remember how SmackDown used to actually be? SmackDown used to be the show that everybody wanted to watch. Remember how it would always start off with some excitement and then it would just always leave you wanting more? Well, nowadays, we don't even get that. Nowadays, it's just I can't wait to get through the show because it's just not engaging to watch. SmackDown is just very boring and repetitive. Now, I'm going to get more into that here soon, but I just wanted to say, if you're new to the channel, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Really would appreciate that. That's all I have to really say. Let's just get straight into the video. So, SmackDown used to be really cool to watch. SmackDown was literally the show where you wanted to tune in to see what would happen. It was the fallout of Raw. SmackDown was actually created in 1990 by The Rock because The Rock would say, lay it the SmackDown, and it became his show. And that's just how big this show really was. The fact that you had somebody like The Rock creating it. And SmackDown had this just amazing thing about it where, of course we would love watching Raw, but then when we would tune in to see this show, we would always get like some unanswered questions as to what happened on Raw. And we would always kind of get more continuations of what the story was. And that's the thing. From 1999 to 2015, we had some really incredible stories being told. The matches would matter sometimes, and promos were fun to watch, and just everything about it was just engaging. The show would start off with some pyro. We'd have our incredible matches in between. We'd have some promos of people coming out and cutting them, and then it would end differently. Let's look at this SmackDown right here from 2001. This is literally what a SmackDown was during that time. It was guys like The Rock and Stone Cold and Triple H and Undertaker and Kane all in the same ring together having a match. And this was considered just a regular SmackDown. And it would end literally like as if it could be in like a WrestleMania type caliber. That's literally how big this stuff was back then. Nowadays, who do we have? Guys like Kit Wilson and The Miz coming out with Danhausen. What kind of stuff is that, honestly? And I'm not trying to knock on The Miz. Don't get me wrong. I like The Miz. He's really entertaining to watch sometimes. But I'm just saying, look at the caliber and look at the difference in WWE star power. Because let's just call it what it is. WWE does not really have any stars right now. I've already made a video on that entirely. But the thing with SmackDown is they're not using these guys to their full potential. And just a few weeks ago, we had Pat McAfee coming out, and he was cutting some even though people didn't agree with the whole Pat McAfee angle, he was coming out and he was cutting some pretty truthful promos and saying some truth behind it. And basically, he was burying the company and the product. But that's the thing. We don't hear guys coming out and having that attitude or that spunk like they used to have. Back then, these guys used to actually come out and want to put their soul into what they were saying. And SmackDown used to actually feel kind of cool to watch in that regard because you would actually want to hear what they were saying. And it always had these matches that actually were kind of different from each other. Sometimes you would get just a random steel cage match on SmackDown. And it was just like, what? Why are we getting a steel cage? Or we get a ladder match. Now, we did have a ladder match last year with the tag teams, which, by the way, that's one of the greatest SmackDown matches in all of history, I feel like, because of just the fact that it was so many great spots. And I really wish they were on the WrestleMania card last year, but, beggars can't be choosers. But then we also had, the entire Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle match for the Iron Man match. It was so so unheard of during this time. We used to have those kind of matches on SmackDown, and it actually would kind of coincide with what the story was, considering the fact that if they were two guys that were saying hey, I'm better than you, I'm going to prove it by being in the middle of this ring. We're going to settle our beef. That's actually what they would do. They would put the championship on the line and they would have unique matches like that. Nowadays, it's just we have to build up for what Backlash is going to be, or what Money in the Bank's going to be, or SummerSlam, or whatever, basically. And it doesn't really have that amazing feel to it. And this kind of just goes back to what I was saying. Like, look at the card on SmackDown. Do you guys really think you want to see these kind of guys wrestling every week? The segments feel very repetitive with what they're doing. Like, look at this segment, for example, with Lash Legend and Nia Jax. They just won the tag team titles. And not to mention, Nia just did this a few years ago where she won the women's title, where they had champagne, they were in the middle of the ring, and they were basically just cutting this promo. Well, now look at what happened with Lash Legend and Nia Jax. They did the same thing. And then you get to just this past Friday, and you see Trick Williams doing the same exact thing with Lil Yachty, where he just won the U.S. title. And while we're on the topic about Lil Yachty and Trick Williams, why does Lil Yachty have to be with Trick Williams? You didn't see Kurt Angle coming out with Michael Jackson to try to get him over with the crowd. Again, WWE is trying to bring in celebrities more so to try to have them become like getting casuals in on the product, which I get that, but that's the thing. You can't get these guys over more if they're just going to come in and bring in celebrities, expecting them to be basically the definitive answer of like, this is how they're going to get over in the WWE. Trick Williams should be able to just kind of cut his own promos and be on his own self. He doesn't need to have somebody like Lil Yachty with him. Yeah, that's just the thing. SmackDown just is very unwatchable in 2026. The only time you really care to watch SmackDown nowadays is if it's like Cody, which that's very hard to even say, or if it's like Drew occasionally. We would want to see guys like John Cena and Brock Lesnar and Rey Mysterio and Edge and Batista and Undertaker and all these other guys that would come out because you actually cared about the product. You wanted to invest your time into it. You wanted to explore more of the stories, and you actually wanted to do that. That's the thing. Nowadays, we watch it for 3 hours, and sometimes most of the time, it feels like you just kind of wasted your time because of the fact that nothing's happened. And the same could be said even with Raw. And remember the brand split? Remember when guys would be on SmackDown and they would actually stay on SmackDown? Nowadays, you guys that come from SmackDown that just go on Raw, and it kind of seems like it's not a big deal. And the fact that we used to grow up with SmackDown versus Raw, and, Here Comes the Pain and all that kind of stuff. We used to actually really think that it was the coolest thing ever to see guys who were on SmackDown feuding with Raw guys because it was just unheard of. And that's kind of what leads me to the next point. We would go from watching SmackDown after a show, like we'd have our friends come over and we would want to watch SmackDown, and then we would turn the show off and put on some Here Comes the Pain or play some SVR games, and it actually used to matter. It was actually fun to actually be a fan of wrestling. We always watch because we know it could be better. We know SmackDown could be better. We've seen better, and we don't want it to basically do what it's been doing. Do you guys remember the stage design of SmackDown? Like, when it first was revealed that SmackDown was the way it looked, it did look pretty cool, I won't lie. But then we get to 2002 and 2003, and we'd see the big fist and everything. And the fist was always iconic. See, a lot of people really hold this regard as one of the greatest designs in the WWE just because of the fact that the fist was actually really engaging, and it was basically just what it represented of the time of SmackDown. And for a lot of people, this is something that's really special to them and hold a lot in their heart. And same with me. I loved the fist design. The fist design was literally the SmackDown that I grew up watching. So this really just meant a lot to a lot of us. And overall, like I said, SmackDown nowadays, like you look at the design and you just kind of see like what exactly it looks like. It's just the most bland, generic type of design ever. It's just a plain blue backstage with the thing that says SmackDown. That's all it says. And the only time SmackDown I feel like was actually watchable in the 2020s was with Roman and even just a few years ago with The Rock. Roman literally was carrying SmackDown at one point. And, Roman was making the show actually engaging to watch after, he basically came back in 2020, and he was making it actually fun to watch. You actually would care about like what was happening, and it almost felt like it was a privilege and a joy to see somebody like Roman showing up. And nowadays, nobody's on the show except Cody or Drew, and it just gets really repetitive after a while. But that's really all I have to say about SmackDown as a whole. I just feel like the show is just unwatchable. It's 3 hours of nothing now. They feel like they have to keep progressing and making the show longer because that's what the problem is as to why their viewership is going down. But if you're going to have a 3 hour show, make it actually entertaining. Give us some stuff that we actually care about. They're trying to build up Royce Keys currently, and Royce Keys is not bad from what I've seen, but at the same time, do we really care about Royce Keys? And that's the thing. We all really do care about WWE at the end of the day. We all don't want it to be like this at the state of it being unwatchable. Why we have our views about it, that's the reason why we all have our different opinions, because we all want to see this product be good. But that's all I have to really say at the end of the day, guys. What do you guys think about SmackDown in 2026? Do some of you guys even watch the show nowadays? What was like your favorite SmackDown moment in general? I'll just catch you guys in the next one. Peace.